Hi guys, Samantha from Jessica Tutorials here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create a hollow collar using my pointed collar cutter. Now we'll get to that part later on. Right now we want to make the veneers that we are going to be using in the collar. So I'm going to be working with Kato clay today, but you can use any brand you want. And what I have here are some skin blades, so let me just take these out of the way and I'll show you which ones are which. So I want to go with kind of a four seasons effect today. So for spring I have Kato magenta with white and turquoise with white. And if you don't know how to create a skinner blend, I will provide a link to how to create a skinner blend in the links below. But basically you have a magenta and white skinner blend and a turquoise and white skinner blend. Then for summer I've gone with white and green and then white and brown. Autumn we have yellow and white and red and white. And then finally for winter I've gone with purple and white and blue and white. Okay, so again you can use any colours you want. You could use any veneer you want. You don't even have to go with a Magano veneer. Okay, so to start what we're going to do is we are going to take each of these skinner blends and we're going to fold it in half like so. Just press it together. Okay, so you end up with a strip like so, and then you're going to run that through the pasta machine, lengthening your strip. Like so. Then take it down to about a millimetre thick setting, which is number 3 on my machine, and just run that through again, like so. Okay. Now I do have a little bit of mess on this side, but it doesn't really matter that much. Then you're going to take it from the white end, and I always go from the white end, and you're just going to roll it up, like so. And you will repeat that with all of your skinner blends, always going from white first through to the colour. Then once you've done that, I've got a piece of black Kato here that has been run out on my thinnest setting, so it's about roughly half a millimetre thick. And you're going to take that and we are going to wrap each skinner blend, bullseye cane, in it. And there we go. Okay. And that is what you will do for each of your bullseyes. Okay. Then when you've done that, take each of your bullseye canes and I want you to reduce them down to about 1 centimetre in diameter. Now, as far as much clay I used for each of these bullseyes, the white and the coloured parts are about 1/8 of a block of Kato, and that's the small blocks. Okay, so you just want to roll it out to about that thickness. And now these ends make for great leftover clay. So keep those and we could do a leftover tutorial later on probably. So there, I'm going to repeat that with each of my canes. Okay, so once you've got all of your excuse me, all of your pieces together, just make sure that you keep the seasons together. So I've got the winter ones here together, autumn, summer and spring. So just make sure that you know which ones are which. So I'm going to start with the winter one. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them into lengths. Roughly about, let's see, how long would those lengths be? Roughly about 5 centimetres in length. And I want you to just take that and I want you to stack it like so. Okay. And then go from the corner and kind of flatten it out. Like so. Doesn't have to be exact. But I just want you to squish this into a nice square or rectangular shaped plug. Like so. And I would repeat with the other ones as well. Okay, and then here is roughly what you should get. So I've taken each slab and I've just popped them together. So I've gone winter, spring, summer and fall. Okay, and I want you to very gently press them all together, and you can use your roller to just coax those to lie together. And I'm just stretching it out because we have more than enough here for one collar, and so I don't want to be wasting a whole bunch of it. I'd rather just stretch it out, cut the amount that I'm going to need, and then use the other parts for some or other project later on. So I'm just using my roller to flatten this out. And we need it to be fairly thin to use as a veneer, because we will be shaving magenta off of it, but we still need to flatten it out a fair amount, because it was probably about at least 2 centimeters thick, and I need it to be at minimum half a millimeter thick. Half a centimeter thick, not half a millimeter. And I wouldn't use your pasta machine, you don't really need to do that. And I'll just gently stretch that out. Okay, and these end pieces do need to get trimmed off. And here you can see how that looks. So if I take a look at my collar here, we could probably chop it in roughly about half. I'm going to run it through my pasta machine now though. I'm going to be lengthening the stripes. And this was on my thickest setting. So now I am going to cut that roughly in half. There you can see how that looks. And I'm going to use my Lisa Pavelka's foliage texture stamp. Just go place that down, and I'm going to get a wet sponge or rag to use over the top of this. Okay, and the reason I do this is because I don't want my clay to stick to my fingers or to my rolling pin. So by putting a sponge in the way that is wet, it won't stick, which is very nice. Okay, so now I'm going to roll that across and roll that side. And now that's not going to have given me a clean enough impression, but it will have started it off, and so then I just use my fingers to imprint the rest. And you can stand up and do this, of course, but you really want that impression to be as deep as you can get it. And because again we're using the sponge, you can go back over and roll, because that's going to prevent your roller from sticking to the clay and therefore lifting it up out of the stamp, which is what we want to avoid. So just do that a few times, making sure that you have a nice even impression. Okay, and then when that's done, you need to wait for the surface of your clay to dry so that we can press it down onto our tile and stick it down with the stamp still on it. Okay, Then once it's dry, you're going to take that, flip it, and you're going to stand up for this. And I want you to press down nice and hard on this. Pay special attention to the edges of your veneer. You'll be able to feel that through your stamp. And just make sure that it's pressed down onto your tile, a ceramic one or a glass one, as best you can. And this will mean that when we're shaving it, it shouldn't move around and it will just make it a lot easier. Okay, so I think we're just about ready to lift that up. Let's take from one side and peel it up, like so. Okay, then you're going to want a nice flexible tissue blade. And you're going to do this very slowly. There's no rush. And you're just going to shave away the surface, like so. And you don't want to be going too deep because you want the black to outline your pattern. And each time you've finished, make sure to rub or just smooth away these little bits that we shave off, because you don't want them sticking to your pattern. Okay, and then you're just going to continue shaving, just like so, until you've completed the entirety of your veneer. And you can, if you see a spot where you might have gone a little too shallow, you can always just go back and shave that particular spot. Okay, and here is how it should look. So then, once you've finished that, you'll take a piece of plain printing paper and you will begin to burnish, because you want this to be completely smooth. You don't want any ridges or raised areas or general dents and bumps. You want it to be a nice smooth veneer. And the best way to do that without distorting your pattern is to just take a piece of plain printing paper and begin rubbing with your fingers or with your roller. Personally, I prefer my fingers, but you could use a roller as well. And just continue doing this. You can lift up the paper every once in a while to check whether or not it's smooth, but you should be able to feel it for the most part. So I think we're almost done there. Okay. And I definitely have a few areas to do still, so I'm going to continue just burnishing away until I'm happy with it. Okay. So the next step is going to be to take your blade and lift this up, and I'm going to run this through my pasta machine on the thickest setting. And what I'm going to do to protect the veneer, because sometimes you can get little bits coming off of your pasta machine that stick to the surface and end up creating a blemish, what I will do is I'll take a piece of paper, place this nice side down onto the paper and run that through my pasta machine. Now of course this paper is too wide, so let me use this piece here. And I will run that through on my thickest setting. And now this is thinner than my thickest setting, so I'm going to go down 2, and I will run this through again. Okay, so now it's about 1 millimeter thick. So there you can see how that looks. And also the paper will have given it a nice smooth surface. So now what I want to do is I'm just going to gently trim these edges. Okay. And then I've got my cutter over here, and I can see how that's going to look. And you're going to basically place this face down. Okay. And now actually what I want to do is because this, what we basically need to do is we need to make a veneer that's going to be able to go around the entirety of the collar. So I'm going to run out some black. Okay, so here I have two sheets of black, and this is black souffle. Now keep in mind that this is only here to really help us make sure that we get the domed effect, so you don't have to worry about using all of this clay. It's just to help us with our piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay this down like so and get a general idea of the angle that I need to cut it for it to sit nicely up against this. Then take a piece of paper and just burnish along that edge to just blend those two pieces together so that they stick anyway. Okay. There we go. Then just lift that up. And I'm just going to check if that's going to sit. That will sit just about right. I need to hold that there, which is where that's going to be. And I'm just going to trim off this excess. Okay, and then I'll pop it on top of these pieces. So just cut away that and that. And then just stick it on the top so that we bulk out that clay, because it needs to fit the shape of the collar for it to work. And just burnish to make sure that those pieces fit together nicely, so that when we are putting it in the collar and trying to dome it, so that we don't want these pieces to split. So it's important to make sure that you do this part right. Okay, then lift that up and lift that up. Okay, and then before you move on, just check that it's going to sit correctly. And it does. Okay, and then to make sure that we don't have a whole bunch of excess clay just kind of flopping around, I like to trim away a bit of this excess. Now don't trim away too much, you need some to work with, but just trim away enough that you're going to have an easier time working with it. Just going to pick that up, turn your cutter upside down, place it down. Okay, then press along the edge of your cutter like so, pressing in enough that your clay will stick to the edge, so that it's got something to grip onto. But don't press hard enough that it's going to cut straight through the clay. That's something we do not want. Okay, then to help with the next step, I like to take some water. So let me just grab some water. And I like to just spray the surface. And this is just going to make our fingers slide over the surface easier, and it will prevent our fingers from sticking. And now when you're doing this, you generally want to hold the sides so that it doesn't skip over the rim of the cutter as you smooth. Okay, and these black parts we probably actually are going to use, because I do want to use black parts. in my project, but if you are going to use a different veneer, then you would basically cut off the black after we've domed it, and I'll show you how to do that, of course. And then you would repeat the process by putting the veneers that you wanted on this side and then putting the black basically where our veneer is. Okay, and so you want to pay special attention to doming those sides. Especially the thinner areas, they need a bit of work. And you can see how having less excess clay just kind of flopping around on the edges really helps. Okay, now that needs to dry before we can move on to the next step. Okay, now the next step is pretty important. So I want you to take some liquid clay, and it should be translucent liquid clay. As that is just going to work the best, because it means if you do happen to get any smears, it's just not going to show up. And I'm using Sculpey liquid clay. And I just want you to brush that along the edges of your clay, where the clay is going to meet the other piece of clay. So just where your cutter's edges are, essentially. Just take that and smear a generous amount over that, and this is just going to make sure that we have a really nice bond between this veneer that we have right here and our backing veneer. It also means if you did happen to cut through, it's not a huge disaster. Okay, and also you're going to have wanted to roll out a sheet of black clay, so about 1 millimeter thick, to act as a backing. Okay, then I'm just going to move that out the way. Just be careful with it. And I just wiped up the tile. And here's a piece of black souffle that I rolled out to the correct size. And what I want to do before I use it is I want to just burnish it so that we get a nice even texture with no fingerprints. And it's nice to have it on a piece of paper anyway, because it gives you a little bit of leverage with the next step. Bring over your other piece again, and I actually am going to put this onto a piece of paper so that it doesn't stick to the tile. Just making sure one last time that it is smoothed out enough that it's going to dome. Okay. Then take this, and I want you to place that over the top, like so. And now don't press on it, just rub along these edges where the cutter edge is, like so. Then I'm going to cut this directly onto the tile so that it sticks. So you want to very carefully flip that over. Okay, and then I like to just stick these parts down. Not hard, just enough that they're not flipping up or anything like that. And then you will press down on your cutter, cutting through all the layers of clay. Like so. Just make sure you've got a really good so. Okay. Then lift up very carefully. Okay. And remove your excess. And there we go. You have a nice collar. Then I'll just place the collar cutter back down, like so. Okay, and then I'm going to take a blade, and where these joining lines are, I'm actually going to make a cut just enough for me to see. That up again, and then using a nice flexible sharp tissue blade, you will cut down. Okay, like so. Then I'm going to make a cut over here, and I'm going to remove that. And then I'm going to measure how much space there is between this. It's about 3 centimeters. And that will tell me whereabouts I should cut this one. Okay, and so I can see that there's a little bit of purple left, so I'm going to cut again. Again, measure, it's about 1/2 centimeter. Go to this side, trim back about 1/2 centimeter. Okay, then remove that. Alright, and then that is what we have for now. So what we're going to do next is you want to put this into the oven for a full hour at Primo or Kato's recommended temperature. Primo works pretty well for Kato, especially since we have a lot of souffle black as backing. And then when it comes out, we can then work on the next step. And actually what you can do, if you want this to not have this pinched side like it has over here, what you could also do is you could bake the entire collar like it was before I cut it, and then cut it when it comes out of the oven, and then you would have open sides. The only problem with that though is you're going to end up with a fair amount of wasted clay. Okay, and here are the pieces out of the oven. So now we need to clean up these edges. I've already done that with these two, so I'm going to put them to the side. But with this one and the other ones, of course, all you have to do is you just take a craft knife and you just cut along that edge to remove any little bits that aren't supposed to be there. Very easy. Okay, and of course you would have done that with the other little black pieces as well. There we go, that will have cleaned it up. Okay, so now I'm going to put this to the side because this I want to sand. These ones, however, I want to take a nice coarse piece of sandpaper, which is about 100 grit, I think. And I'm going to start scraping. And I like to go in the direction of the piece. So if you have a look, I'm keeping the curvature of the shape while I'm scraping. Or at least try your best to do that. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but the closer you can get it, the better. Okay. And make sure to get those sides as well. And I'm just going to double check that I've got everywhere that I like. Then just take something like a toothbrush will work. Just go that way. And I just want you to go in with the toothbrush and just give it a clean. This is just going to get rid of a lot of the excess dust. Okay. And then I'm also going to do that on the back of all of our pieces. I'm going to try to follow the shape. Now you, of course, if you wanted to, could sand the backs, but that takes a while, and I think adding a little bit of texture, especially since I wanted to have it on the front, will look nice. Okay. And then just for a good measure with this one anyway, I'm going to do it on the sides as well. Okay, and everything I'm doing with this one, you would repeat with the other black one. Okay, then just clean that up with the toothbrush. Okay, and then when you've cleaned it up, take some white paint, and this is just some acrylic white paint, and I want you to smooth that onto the piece. Now you don't need a huge thick coat, you just need to brush on enough that you're going to be filling in those scratches. So really try to use as little paint as you can, because then it dries quickly and then it's easy to work with. Okay, and remember to do those sides as well. Now, of course, our main piece we are going to do differently. We are not going to do all the scratching. I probably will do it on the back, but I'm still busy deciding. Two black pieces will be the same. Okay, so there we go. Leave that to the side, and now I'm going to do this one next. Okay, so here we go. Now you'll notice I haven't done these sides over here, which is something that I've wanted to do. Now I'm going to take a cloth to start with, and I'm just going to dip it a little bit in some water. I don't want it to be soaking wet, I just want it to be damp. I'm just going to run that over the surface and start to clean that up. And everything I'm doing with this one, you would obviously do with the other one. Okay, so I think I can sand that actually. So I've got some wet dry sandpaper here, and I'm going to be using only the 1200 grit that I have. And now I don't want this to be too wet. I want it to be wet enough that it's going to pick up the sanding particles, but I don't want it to be soaking wet, because I don't want the paint to get rubbed off. I'm just sanding very lightly. Repeat along the sides as well. And instead of dipping it in water to remove any excess dust and stuff, use a cloth to do that, because if you dip it in the water it can remove some of the paint. So just bear that in mind when you're working with this. Okay. And just continue on until you are happy with your result. Okay, and here are those two pieces. Now I'm going to keep them at that current grit, pop them to the side, and now we're going to work with this one. Now I've decided that I'm not going to worry too much about the back as far as sanding it with coarse sandpaper goes. I'm just going to sand it enough to clean it up, and then we're going to be applying resin to the back and resin to the front so that we get a contrast between our two pieces. So I'm going to sand with a 1200 grit as well, but this time I want this to be nice and wet because we don't have to worry about paint. And I don't want to sand off a lot of clay. All I want to do is just smooth up some of the sharp edges and just clean up any areas that I find don't look very nice. Bumps and things like that. So we're not trying to remove a lot of clay, because if we remove a lot of clay we're gonna lose a lot of this leaf effect, which is something that I don't want to happen. And make sure to sand the sides as well. You want those to be comfy to whoever is wearing it. You don't want sharp edges. Okay, and then basically once you're done with this, you're going to just take a little bit of sanding along the back, especially the edges, because I find that the edges have little bits and pieces left over from when the clay was raw, which need to get tidied up. So just sand along those edges, and then we'll basically be finished, and we can apply some Renaissance wax to the first block that we did, and then we can apply some resin to this piece. So there we go. Remember, this is souffle on the back, so it doesn't have to be sanded a ton. Now I've just dipped that in some water just to clean it up. And then this needs to be thoroughly dry before you put resin anywhere near it, because resin and moisture do not go well together. So we will be varnishing this last, and before you varnish, just make sure that it's nice and dry. Okay. So I'll do these two next, and I'm going to be using some Renaissance wax, and this is just to bring out the black and make its colour more obvious. So just take a bit of that wax. And it also does help protect the paint in there. So it's not completely necessary, but it's definitely a good to have. Okay, and just make sure you get that on the front and on the back. And repeat with this one. Okay. Then you can either sand that by hand, or you can use a buffing wheel, which is the way that I prefer to go. And I'm using a Dremel 3000 with my buffing wheel attachment. Now this makes a little bit of noise, so you might want to turn down the sound for this segment. Okay, and there we go. Now you can see how much more obvious the black is, and also hopefully you can see it, there's a nice satin sheen to it. So now I will repeat with that one. Okay, and now both these two pieces are ready for us to work with them. Let's put them to the side, and now we are going to work with this, which should be completely dry by now. So we're going to want to work on a resin mat, and what I would recommend doing, let me see if I can find this, here we go, is just take a piece of clay or blue tack, and I'm actually not going to work on the resin mat this time, just take blue tack or clay and just position this on top, like so. And this just means if we do get any drips, we can easily clean it up, because we're going to be brushing it right over these edges essentially, which just invites drips essentially. Now I'm going to be using this UV resin, which is a nice UV resin to use. and I just want to add a little bit to begin with, and then I'm just going to brush that over the surface, and this is not sticking, it's fine. Just going to brush that over the surface, and the clay just needs to balance on top of that little pedestal. Now this resin takes about half an hour to cure to a rock hard finish, which you need to wait for, because if we're going to be putting resin on the back, we want the front to be nice and hard, so we don't have to worry about it picking up fingerprints or sticking to the surface that we're working on. So you must wait at least half an hour for this resin to cure. And I'm just spreading it all over, and then if I need to go over and redo some spots, then I will do that. Okay. Alright, I'm going to add a little bit more. And spread that out. And then when you're done with this, pop it into the UV light for half an hour. Okay, so while that is in the UV light, I thought we could begin assembling our pieces. So I've chosen these little connectors here, and they're going to attach to this, obviously, and then they're going to attach to our main big piece with these two little loops. So we need to drill a hole in the middle of each of these pieces. It should not be too difficult. Just take your drill bit, make a little hole, and then drill. Like so. And then pop through the other side. And of course you'll want to clean up that side, so go through again. Here we go. And you should have a nice clean hole. Repeat that with this one. Okay. And then you also need to make a hole at the top here. So again, take your drill bit and drill. Okay. Repeat with this one. Okay. Then I'm going to start with the smaller jump ring. I might need a larger one, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to get away with this one. So let's take that, pop it through the hole. Okay, I can pop it through there. Now it's going to be a little fiddly, so just bear with me for a moment or two while I work with this. There we go. There. And then of course we are going to need some more, so I'll just put that to the side there. Grab another one, and I want to attach that to the front over here. You should always check both sides, because this side might be a little thicker than the other side, because the other side's got a little bit of a bevel going on. Okay, and if you can fit them both on both sides, then well, this is the size of jump ring that you can use. Okay, then repeat that process with this one. Okay, now I've got these two little connectors here, which is just going to lengthen the length of our necklace. So you're going to open up your jump ring. Again, this is fiddly, so bear with me. There we go. There we've got another jump ring. Slide that onto the connection again. And close. And I think I'm going to, let's see, am I happy with that? I think I actually want a smaller jump ring if possible. Okay, I've decided instead of a smaller jump ring, I'm actually just going to add on an extra one. like so. There we go, it's better. Now we are going to add our clasp. So let's see, what clasp should we have? You want something that kind of matches the theme, and the theme that we've got going is kind of a leaf theme. So I'm actually going to go with this clasp since we have 2 flowers already. And let me just see if I can find myself the other end. Okay, so I've actually decided we're going to use this clasp. So then all you do is just attach a jump ring to your link here. And I am going to need to attach another jump ring to that just because of how the clasp is made. There we go. And there's the clasp. And just because I want it to look nice over there, I'm going to just add another jump ring. So that fiddly again. There we go. Okay, and that is how you would do this side as well. Okay, so this is out of the UV light, and here is how it looks. You can see how lovely and shiny that is. So now we want to do that to the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop it actually on top of our wet sponge here, just because it's not going to stick to it and it's also not going to introduce any prints of any kind. I'm just going to take my resin here, just apply a decent amount and then just brush that over the surface. And then we'll have a nice shiny back to match our shiny front. And then this again goes into the UV light for half an hour, and then when we're done with that we can drill our holes and attach it to our already pretty much finished necklace. This is just the last little centerpiece that we need to add. Okay, it's almost done. There we go. Okay, and here it is. Now it's a little sticky still on the back just because I like to leave it a little while, and so put it directly on a tile, which resin generally sticks to even if it is cured, isn't a very good idea. So I've just got it on a piece of paper so we can work with it without it causing any issues. Okay, now I have had a little bit of a change of mind when it comes to this. I just don't like that bit. It's not making me feel happy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it up for these two. I'm going to link that over there, put 2 jump rings there, and then this is going to link up with this main piece over here. So I just wanted to tell you that because we're going to be using this as a guide for our holes, because we can't just put in one hole this time around. Okay, so get it roughly in the right spot, like so. And then what I tend to do is I will take this, I'll make a little nick so that I can see where I need to drill, and then I'll make another little nick. Okay, then I'll move this out of the way. And now you have to be careful because we are working with resin here, and so if you're not careful with it and don't go slowly, it can chip. Wipe that away, get rid of that. Then looking for the nick again, there we go. And then repeat over here, and then repeat on the other side. Okay, and there we go. Now I'm just going to take the sponge here, which is wet. I'm just going to use it to wipe the surface clean of any debris. You can use a wet wipe as well. I just happen to have this on hand and it works well. Okay, get rid of all that, and that is ready to go. So I'm just going to pop that to the side. You can use that in a little while, but I want to link these pieces together. Now you saw me do that before, so I'm going to do this off camera and I'll show you how to link it up with the main piece. Okay, so now I will grab a jump ring, open it up. This should go through. There we go. And attach it to this. So again, working with fiddly bits, so I do apologise. Okay. There's the one. I just realised I actually attached this part wrong, so I'll fix that in a little while. But just all you would do then is you would attach another jump ring there and attach it like so. Okay, and there is how it should look once you have finished applying the these pieces. Now, if you have a look closely, you can see that I did need to put in bigger jump rings over here, which is fine. I think it turned out alright. But yeah, I did need to put in bigger jump rings because it wasn't going to link up properly otherwise. So anyway, yeah, that's basically it for this tutorial. I do hope that you enjoyed it. Keep in mind that you can do a lot with this technique. Basically, the main technique that I was showcasing was how to create the hollow collar beads in these segments. Obviously, you can take what I have shown you, and you can play around with it in many different ways. Like for instance, if you wanted these pieces to not have a big gap of clay cut out between them, what you could do is you could create this piece just like we did before, but instead of taking these pieces straight from the black that we had attached to this, you would take that, roll that in the pasta machine, just the black bits anyway, and then you would create an entire collar made out of black, make a whole hollow collar like that. And then you would just take this, measure it against your whole black collar and cut that out, and then these segments would be quite a bit longer. So that is how you could do that. Keep in mind you can do this with many different shapes of collars. I've got lots of different collar cutters on my shop that you could try out for this. You don't even have to make it hollow. If you don't want it to be hollow, you could just cut out the collar and cut it into segments and apply the same techniques that I've shown here. You could also keep the entire collar hollow and not cut it into segments. That's something else that you could do. So there's lots of different ways that you could use the techniques shown in this tutorial. Never mind the fact that I also showed the hidden magic Mukumi on it. You can play with different colours, stamps, all sorts of things. So if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.